Through the reflection in my bedroom mirror, I watched my grandson slip something into the front pocket of his jacket. He didn't know I was standing in the hallway. Didn't know I could see him at my bathroom sink through the angled gap in the door. Marcus's hands moved quickly, deliberately, the hands of a trained professional, as he uncapped one of my blood pressure medication bottles and pulled out a separate vial from inside his jacket. The swap took maybe 15 seconds. Then he was washing his hands like nothing had happened, humming that R&B song his girlfriend always played in her car on Sunday drives over. Stepped back into the shadows of the hallway. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought I might actually need those pills he was messing with. Marcus was my favorite grandson. Hell, if I'm being completely honest with myself, he was my favorite person left in this world. After his parents were killed in that highway accident on I-85 when he was 11 years old, I'd raised him myself. Put him through college, then pharmacy school. Watched him graduate in the top 5% of his class last May, 25 years old, sharp as a blade, already working at one of the most respected pharmacies in Buckhead, Atlanta. And now he was standing in my bathroom, doing something to my medication that he clearly did not want me to see. My name is James Walter, 64 years old, retired high school biology teacher, 32 years in the DeKalb County school system, widower for the past 6 years. I live alone in a brick ranch house in College Park, the same house where I raised Marcus after the accident, the same house where my wife Dorothy and I had talked about rocking on that back porch together until neither of us could walk anymore. Before the stroke took her 3 days after her 58th birthday. These days, it's just me. My blood pressure medication, my Thursday evening Domino's group at the church annex, and Dorothy's rose garden out back that I refuse to let die, no matter how many times my neighbor Jerome tells me I'm wasting my time with it. Marcus visited every Sunday like a promise kept. We'd have dinner, watch whatever game was on, and he'd make sure I was organized with my medications for the week ahead. Such a dedicated young man, everyone said. So devoted to his grandfather. The pharmacy even adjusted his weekend rotation, so he'd never have to miss our Sunday dinners. People at church asked about him constantly. Brother James, that grandson of yours is something special. But 3 months ago, something started feeling wrong. It began with small things. Marcus asking about my life insurance policy. Casual, just sliding it into conversation like it was nothing. Grandpa, you got everything squared away, right? Your will, your insurance, all that. I'd brushed it off. He was young, responsible, probably just went through some financial literacy seminar at work. I was proud of him for thinking ahead. Then came the questions about my health. More pointed, more frequent. You feeling okay? You look tired. You sure the doctors are on top of everything? I was 64, not ancient. My last physical had been solid, aside from the blood pressure, but that's what the medication was managing. 2 months ago, I started feeling worse. Dizzy spells. Headaches that sat behind my eyes, like pressure building in a pipe. A fatigue so heavy I missed Domino's 3 Thursdays in a row, which I had not done in 11 years. My doctor ran tests and increased my dosage. James, Dr. Okongwu had said at my appointment, your pressure is climbing in a direction I don't like. Let's stay on top of this carefully. But it kept climbing. And Marcus kept visiting every Sunday. Kept checking my medications. Kept asking whether I'd updated my insurance beneficiary information. His girlfriend, Brianna, started coming to dinners too. She worked at the same pharmacy, a pharmacy technician, sharp and polished. They'd met at work about 6 months back, started dating almost immediately. She was put together, always well-dressed, the kind of woman who filled a room with her presence. I noticed early on, though, that her eyes had a way of moving through my house like she was taking inventory. Mr. Walter, Property values in College Park have gone through the roof. You're sitting on something serious here. She'd say it smiling, like it was a compliment. I'm a biology teacher. Was a biology teacher. 32 years of teaching teenagers how living systems work, how organisms adapt, how to observe patterns and draw conclusions from what you see rather than what you wish were true. You don't do that work for 3 decades without training yourself to notice when something in the environment has shifted, when the data doesn't match the expected outcome. So 3 weeks ago, I installed cameras. I told no one. Not Dr. Okonkwo, not my Domino's group, not my sister Carolyn down in Houston. I ordered them online, small wireless cameras that fed directly to my phone. I mounted one inside the bathroom smoke detector, angled toward the medicine cabinet. Another in the hallway, disguised as a plug-in air freshener. A third in the kitchen, tucked into the ceramic fruit bowl Dorothy had picked out at a craft fair in Savannah 15 years ago. I felt sick doing it. This was Marcus, the boy I'd raised from 11 years old, the boy who'd sobbed into my shoulder at his parents' funeral and asked me if God made mistakes. The boy who told me, the night before he left for pharmacy school, that I was the only reason he believed he could do anything hard. But something was wrong. And I needed to know what the cameras ran for a week without catching anything significant. Just footage of me moving through my own house, eating alone, taking my medication like a man who trusted the pills in his own bottles. I started thinking I was losing my mind. That grief and age were turning me paranoid about the one person I had left in this world. Then came last Sunday. I'd pretended to fall asleep in my recliner during the game. Something I'd been doing more often lately, genuinely, because the fatigue had gotten that bad. Marcus knew my Sunday pattern cold. Game on the TV, me in my chair, usually out by halftime. He waited 12 minutes after my breathing evened out. Then I heard him stand, heard his footsteps move toward the bathroom. I pulled out my phone, opened the camera app, and watched Dot. He knew exactly which bottle he was looking for. Went straight to it, the blood pressure pills, the ones Dr. Okonkwo had just increased 2 weeks prior. He pulled them out, uncapped them, and dumped my actual medication into his jacket pocket. Then he produced another vial from inside that same jacket and poured those pills that looked identical to mine, into my prescription bottle. The entire exchange took under 60 seconds. He washed his hands, checked himself in the mirror briefly, and walked back to the living room. Grandpa. He shook my shoulder gently. Game's almost over. You want me to help you to bed? I opened my eyes. Let him see the confused, tired old man he expected to find. Oh, did I doze off again? What's the score? We said goodnight at the front door the way we always did. He hugged me, told me he loved me, reminded me to take my medication in the morning like he always did. Don't forget, Grandpa, consistency matters with blood pressure. I watched him walk to his car, watched Brianna in the passenger seat, already on her phone, the glow of the screen lighting her face. Watched them pull out of my driveway and disappear down the block. Then I went to my computer and watched that footage. 53 times. I kept searching for an explanation. That didn't end with my grandson trying to kill me. Maybe the pharmacy had made a dispensing error, and Marcus was quietly correcting it. Maybe Dr. Okonkwo had called in a new prescription without telling me. Maybe there was something reasonable and innocent underneath what I had just witnessed. I couldn't find one. Monday morning, I called into Domino's group and told them I wasn't feeling well, which wasn't entirely untrue, because my hands were shaking as I opened my medication bottle and held one of the replacement pills up to the light. It looked right. Right color, right size, right imprint on the surface. But 32 years of teaching biology and basic chemistry to teenagers in a public school system will teach you one fundamental truth above all others. Appearances are not evidence. I stopped taking my medication that morning, that by Wednesday, something was already different. The fog I'd been living inside for weeks, the kind that made me lose words, mid-sentence and sit down on the edge of the bed just to gather myself, started breaking up. The dizziness that had become my constant companion simply stopped. My energy came back in a way that felt almost suspicious, like my own body was trying to tell me something. It hadn't had the clarity to say. Before Dot, I drove to Dr. Okonkwo's office without an appointment and asked the front desk for a blood pressure. Check. Dr. Okonkwo came out himself when he heard I'd walked in. James, your numbers look excellent. Whatever we're doing, it's working. The new dosage must have finally found its level. He seemed genuinely pleased, except I hadn't taken the new dosage. I hadn't taken anything at all in 3 days. I drove across town, deliberately past Buckhead, past every pharmacy where Marcus might have connections or colleagues who might mention my visit, and stopped at an independent pharmacy in Decatur I'd never been to before. I brought my medication bottle with me and asked the pharmacist whether she could verify that what was inside matched the label on the outside. The pharmacist was a woman, maybe late 40s, with reading glasses on a chain around her neck, and the kind of unhurried patience that tells you a person has seen things and decided not to panic about them anymore. She looked at the bottle. She looked at me. Something in her expression shifted, softened, but also sharpened at the same time. Mr. Walter, is there a specific reason you're asking? I kept it simple. I'd been feeling unwell. I wanted to make sure I was taking the right thing. She took 3 pills from my bottle and disappeared into the back. 15 minutes later, she came back with a different look on her face, entirely. Mr. Walter, these are not blood pressure medications. She paused, choosing her next words with the careful precision of someone who understood the weight of what she was about to say. They appear to be diuretics, water pills. I'd need to send them to a lab for a complete analysis, but I'm fairly confident. Where was this prescription filled? I told her the name of the pharmacy in Buckhead. Her expression went carefully neutral in the way that people's faces do when they're trying not to confirm what they're thinking. Mr. Walter, I think you should speak with the police. What would diuretics do to someone taking them instead of blood pressure medication? I asked. She looked at me steadily. If someone replaced blood pressure medication with diuretics, the blood pressure would rise, possibly dangerously. Combined with the fluid loss from the diuretics themselves, the patient would experience dizziness, fatigue, cognitive fog. In an older patient with a documented history of hypertension, she stopped. Started again. In a patient like you, this combination could trigger a stroke or a cardiac event. It would appear completely consistent with a patient whose condition was worsening despite treatment. I sat in my car in that pharmacy parking lot for the better part of an hour. I watched people come and go through the automatic doors. Regular people picking up regular prescriptions that no one in their family had tampered with. The pharmacist had given me her card, and very gently, the way strong women often deliver hard truths, with both the blade and the grace, suggested that I might want to consider staying somewhere safe for the time being, but I wasn't ready to run. Not yet, because I needed more than footage of a pill swap. A defense attorney could reframe that footage as Marcus correcting a pharmacy error. I needed proof of intent. I needed to understand what had turned the boy I raised into someone who would do this. More than anything, I needed evidence that would hold up in a courtroom under pressure. I went home and removed one of the replacement pills from my bottle, sealed it in a small plastic bag, and hid it in my freezer behind the bag of lima beans Dorothy used to make me eat despite my objections. Then I put the remaining pills back in the bottle and went back to playing my role. I palmed my fake medication at meals, tucked the pills into my pocket, and flushed them later. But when Marcus was around, I shuffled more. I let my hands tremble slightly when I poured coffee. I forgot words on purpose, let sentences trail off, rubbed my eyes with the particular confusion of a man whose edges were blurring. I became exactly what he needed me to be. The following Sunday, Marcus and Brianna arrived at 5:30. She was carrying groceries. "We brought everything for dinner, Mr. Walter. I'm making my grandmother's pasta." She moved through my kitchen with the ease of someone already at home in it. And I noticed, as I had noticed before, but now catalogued carefully, the way her eyes took in the cabinets, the square footage, the back window facing the garden. She was a woman who had done her math and knew exactly what this house was worth. Over dinner, Marcus mentioned a vacation they were planning. Maybe Cancun, maybe somewhere in the Dominican. Just need to stack a little more first, you know. Pharmacy techs don't pull pharmacist money. How much do you need? I asked, playing my part fully. I've got savings. I could help. Something crossed his face. A fraction of a second. A quick calculation behind his eyes. That's real generous, Grandpa. But you hold on to that. Medical bills and all. You never know. After dinner, Marcus did what he always did. Let me organize your medications before we head out. Make sure you're set for the week. He went to the bathroom. I excused myself to get dessert from the kitchen, pulled out my phone, and watched through the camera as he swapped my pills again. This time, he also took a photograph of my prescription bottle, zoomed in on the label, the dosage, the prescribing doctor's information. I noted that. A photograph meant documentation. Documentation meant planning beyond a single event. The next morning, I drove to a phone repair shop on Campbellton, rode and asked the young man behind the counter to transfer my security footage to 4 separate USB drives. He watched a few seconds of the footage and looked up at me. Sir, are you okay? I'm being careful, I said. That's all. He made 4 copies. I deposited one in my safe deposit box at the credit union. Mailed one to my sister Carolyn in Houston with a note. Don't open this unless something happens to me. Kept one in Dorothy's old cedar jewelry box in the back of my closet. Kept the 4th in my wallet at all times. Then I called a lawyer, not the family attorney who'd handled my will for 20 years. Someone Marcus had never heard of, a woman named Patricia Hargrove, who specialized in estate litigation and elder law. I laid everything out for her as evenly as I could. The footage, the pharmacist's analysis, the timeline of my declining health. She listened without interrupting, then was quiet for a long moment. Mr. Walter, she said, you need to go to the police today. What you're describing is attempted murder. I know, I said. But first I need to understand the financial structure. My grandson Marcus is the primary beneficiary on my life insurance, roughly $280,000, and my house in College Park, which is probably worth over $400,000 in this market. How would that pay out if I died? She walked me through it. If the death appeared to be natural causes, consistent with a documented medical history of hypertension, treated by a physician, declining gradually, the insurance company would process the claim within months. No red flags, no investigation, just a sad, expected loss. I went home and did something I had never imagined doing. I searched Marcus's room, his old room, where I'd put glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling when he was 12 and couldn't sleep after his parents died, where his first-place science fair ribbon still hung above the desk. His laptop was in the closet, not password protected. Maybe he assumed I wouldn't know how to navigate it. He'd forgotten. I spent 32 years teaching teenagers who grew up online, and that keeping up with technology had always been part of the job. His email was open. I read it all. Just a few more weeks. One message read, "The old man is barely holding on. When it happens, it'll look completely natural. And Brianna's reply, "Are you sure about the dosage?" His response, "I'm a pharmacist. I know exactly how much and for how long." I've been logging his doctor visits, building a paper trail showing his condition worsening despite treatment. No one will question it. The insurance is $280 plus the house. We pay off your debt, seed the pharmacy we've been talking about, and finally start our actual life. I had to stand up and walk to the window. Outside, Dorothy's roses were in the last of their fall color, deep red against the brick, exactly the way she'd always kept them. I stood there a long time before I could go back and finish reading. The emails went back 6 months, right to when Marcus and Brianna started dating. Except the earliest messages made clear that the relationship had never been accidental. They had not fallen for each other at work. They had identified an opportunity together and built the relationship around it. "Your grandfather is ideal," Marcus had written in their second exchange. "Lives alone. No other close family. Trusts me with everything. Life insurance plus property, we're talking over $600,000, and I'm already handling his medications every week." Brianna's response, "How long will it take?" 3 months, maybe 4. Gradual replacement with diuretics. Gradual documentation of declining health. His doctor will think the medication just isn't controlling the condition. When the cardiac event comes, it'll be expected. Sad, but completely expected. And then, 20 messages later, in Brianna's handwriting, "Why stop at 1? You're a pharmacist. You have access to dozens of vulnerable patients. We've already worked out the method. I printed every email on Marcus's own printer, in his own room, in my own house. Then I found the real pills, my actual blood pressure medication, in a shoebox under his bed. Bottles of them, collected over months, stored carefully, so that if anyone ever asked where the dispensed medication had gone, the answer was here, accounted for. No irregularities. I photographed everything. Put it all back exactly as I'd found it. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark in the house where I'd spent my whole adult life and thought about Marcus at 11 years old, asking me in the car on the way home from his parents' funeral if I was going to leave him too. I thought about Marcus at 17, studying at my kitchen table at midnight, refusing to go to bed until he understood what he'd gotten wrong on his practice exam. I thought about Marcus at 23, standing on a stage in a gown and a mortarboard, pointing at me in the crowd while they read his name. I couldn't have done any of this without you, Grandpa. Everything I am started with you. I'd believe every word of it. Tuesday morning, I called Detective Renee Caldwell. Patricia Hargrove, my attorney, had given me her name, a detective who'd spent 12 years specializing in elder financial abuse and exploitation cases. I drove to the precinct downtown with my laptop, the printed emails, and the pill I'd sealed in a plastic bag in my freezer. Detective Caldwell watched the camera footage without a word. She read the emails slowly, and her expression moved through several things: professional composure, controlled anger, something that looked briefly like grief. Then she looked up at me. "Mr. Walter, how are you still alive?" I stopped taking the pills 3 weeks ago. Once I suspected something was wrong. Marcus doesn't know. I've been pretending. Acting more confused, acting sicker. She leaned back in her chair and studied me the way people study something they're trying to understand completely before they act. That was intelligent. Also dangerous. "But you've given us more than enough for a warrant." She paused. "I have to ask, why did you wait? Why not come to us immediately when you first saw the footage?" "I needed to know why," I said. "And I needed evidence that couldn't be explained away as a mistake or a miscommunication. I needed it to be undeniable. And now it is." The police moved with the kind of focused efficiency that tells you they've been waiting for a case like this to land on their desk. Warrants for Marcus's phone and laptop. Warrants for his personnel records at the Buckhead Pharmacy. Toxicology analysis on my pills. An investigation opened by the State Board of Pharmacy. A search of Brianna's apartment in Midtown. In Brianna's apartment, they found files on 8 other elderly patients. Handwritten notes in Marcus's handwriting in the margins, medication schedules, asset valuations, insurance policy numbers, family contact information, or the deliberate absence of it. Women and men who had been identified, studied, and targeted. Patients who trusted the people handling their prescriptions the way people are supposed to be able to trust them. Detective Caldwell called me 4 days later. Mr. Walter, we'd like you at the station. We're bringing Marcus in for questioning, and we think your presence behind the glass. You won't have to speak to him. May be useful when we present the evidence. I went. They had him in the interview room. I stood behind the two-way mirror and watched Detective Caldwell, calm, precise. The kind of woman who had clearly learned that quiet authority lands harder than volume. Lay out everything on the table in front of him. The footage, the emails, the lab analysis of the pills, the 8 patient files from Brianna's apartment. Marcus went pale, then red. Then he started crying, and when he cried, he looked exactly like the 11-year-old boy I'd put to bed 1,000 nights in that brick house in College Park. I didn't want to hurt him, he said. We needed the money. Brianna's in debt, serious debt. People who don't accept payment plans. They threatened us. I was trying to protect her. By killing your grandfather. Detective Caldwell said, flat, factual, the kind of sentence a woman delivers when she has seen this story before and refuses to let it be softened. It wasn't supposed to be killing. He's 64. He has high blood pressure anyway. I was just accelerating the timeline. He'd raised me. I was grateful. But what kind of life does he have now? Alone in that house, his wife gone, no real future ahead of him. He looked directly at the mirror. When it happened, at least the money would have gone somewhere. It could build something. I left the room before I did something that would complicate Detective Caldwell's case. Found me in the hallway 20 minutes later. He gave up Brianna completely. Turns out she's been running variations of this scheme for over 2 years through different pharmacies across the metro area. She'd identify patients through pharmacy records, elderly, assets, limited family contact, and recruit pharmacy staff she could manipulate or partner with. Your grandson is the 3rd pharmacist. She paused. We've identified at least 14 patients total. 4 of them died. Their families were told it was natural causes. We're reopening those cases. I sat down in that hallway for a long time. Marcus pleaded guilty. The evidence gave him no other rational option. At sentencing, I gave a victim impact statement. I'd written it and rewritten it until the night before, when I finally accepted that no amount of revision was going to make it say what I actually needed to say. So I stood up in that courtroom, and I said the thing that was true. I raised you after your parents died. I put you through school. I supported every dream you said out loud. I loved you more than I knew how to say. And you decided I was worth more as a death benefit than as a grandfather. Marcus was crying. Grandpa, I'm sorry. I never meant it, I said. You planned it over months. You documented my decline like a controlled experiment. I taught you how to observe carefully, how to measure, how to track data over time. You used everything I gave you to try to end my life. I need you to live with knowing that the judge sentenced him to 20 years. Brianna received life with no possibility of parole for 30 years. The other members of her network received varying sentences. The Board of Pharmacy stripped Marcus of his license permanently. I testified at 2 of the trials for families of the patients who had died. Women and men who had trusted the wrong people at the most vulnerable point in their lives. I owed them that testimony. I gave it 6 months after sentencing. I drove to the correctional facility and asked to see him. They brought him in looking thin, and older than 25 should look. We sat across from each other at a table with a corrections officer 10 feet away. "Why'd you come?" he asked. "Because you're still my grandson," I said. "What you did is unforgivable, and I will not pretend otherwise. But I'm forgiving you anyway, not for your sake, for mine. Because carrying that weight was finishing what your pills started. I choose to live. That means I choose to put this down." His eyes filled. "You're 25, I continued. When you walk out of here, you'll still be a man with time. Use it, not for yourself, for those families. For the 4 people who didn't get to make the choice I made. Let that be what shapes the rest of your life. I haven't been back since my blood pressure is stable now. Real medication, verified pharmacy, Dr. Okonkwo monitoring every 3 months. I still live in my house in College Park. I still tend Dorothy's roses. They came back stronger this spring than they have in years, which feels like something, though I'm not sure exactly what. I still play dominoes on Thursday nights. People ask me how a man forgives something like this. The truth is, forgiveness isn't a feeling. It's a decision you make on behalf of your own survival. You can hold someone fully accountable, demand the justice, testify at the trials, sit behind the glass and watch the confession, and still choose not to let their worst act define the rest of your story. I'm 64 years old. I've buried a wife, raised a grandson, and survived what he tried to do to me. I've learned that people are not simply one thing, and that the hardest work of being human is holding both the grief and the hope in the same hands without dropping either one. I don't know who Marcus will be in 20 years, but I know who I am right now. And right now, I'm a man who is still here, still choosing, still tending what was left to him by the people he loved. That's enough.